Hello and welcome to the Cole.notcole podcast. I'm Cole Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm joined today by Nathan. He is the president of the NDP Club of the University of Lethbridge, and we're going to be talking about the failures of the NDP in the last federal election. There's a lot of failures to talk about,
Yeah,
so thanks for
definitely
joining
a
me,
lot.
Nathan.
Oh, thank you so much, Cole. I really appreciate being here. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, there's honestly just to start off, there have been a lot of failures, but we can get onto it like more so later on, but you can go ahead first.
So I think we should touch on first, like as a general sense, I hear from the NDP a lot whenever they're asked about the election. They say this was a unique election because of Donald Trump and the way the liberals framed it and this outside threat. People thought that they, had to strategically vote for the liberals to protect themselves from Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump. Do you agree with that or do you disagree with that?
Honestly, my answer is very nuanced, right? I think there are external factors that really pushed the NDP to its position, like where it was, like fourth place. Obviously, we got, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got 5% of the popular vote and obviously 7 seats in the House. So it really was, like, honestly, a disaster. And I think it's both, right? There are like fundamental external factors that we could not have controlled that would lead to the impact that it had. But I'll be honest, especially with everything coming out recently, there are internal factors that have or that did impact the performance of the NDP. And I'm willing to talk about that, to the extent of what I know. But I generally do believe that it's both, right? There were external and there were internal factors that led to the downfall of the NDP this election cycle.
Yeah, okay, first off, I think that people were tired of Jagmeet Singh. I think we had seen him for so long. It's sort of like, and not to sound rude, but it's like the losing horse that you've bet on
Yeah,
before. Why are you going to bet on him again? He's already lost. You know he's going to lose again. Everybody knew he's not going to be prime minister. So the fear was, what if Pierre Poilievre ends up as prime minister? Like I think for a lot of people there that was a real fear. And on the other hand, through the election cycle, I didn't like, I understand the NDP's values of what they stand for. Like, there's no question about it. But I think when it comes down to the questions of like affordability in the economy, I really don't. I didn't know what they were proposing, and I'm sure they were proposing something, but I didn't hear about it. They weren't loud enough about it, and they didn't have a policy that resonated with me to think, "Wow, that's going to change my life."
well, actually, yeah, on the first point, I agree, right? Jagmeet Singh, especially with his performance for the past, I think, like, let me go around 3 elections, have been kind of stagnating. From, like the seats we had with Tom O'Care, to the seats now that we do. Like, obviously, he wasn't that good of a leader. And obviously, we lost the trade-off as well between wanting more progressive policies or avoiding the, conservative government, right? And I fundamentally agree. Like people in like their when I talk to people in the doors when I was door knocking for the election, a lot of people mentioned to me that the more rational people mentioned to me that the reason why they voted for or they're going to vote for Carney is because they don't want a conservative government, which is like it didn't really matter as to what the NDP was going to be. It was just obviously to avoid that, and drug meeting necessarily didn't help. I'll be honest, right? Like I respect him, but I don't think he helped our case at all in selling to the Canadian people what they want. And to your second point, I also agree. Like we didn't have strong policies up until the last week to the election, right? Like even now, right? To ask anyone in the audience, like, do you know anything fundamental to the NDP policy wise that you can associate them with, right? Like me personally, I can't. Like I'm finding it hard
No,
right now to
and I know I've told you this
like agree with you.
before.
Yeah,
The only thing I can remember from the election is the East-West pipeline or East-West energy grid, not a pipeline. They would never propose a pipeline, but an East-West energy grid. And I just remember them, saying that. Jagmeet Singh was saying that often, and I was thinking to myself, how could this resonate with anybody? Like people are worried about
exactly.
paying their rent, they're worried about paying for groceries. How does that help people put money in their pockets? And I think too, there's also this aspect of like them generalizing things like we're going to make life more affordable for you. Okay, well what is that? Like what policy is going to make things more affordable? Because for the liberals and conservatives, it was kind of the same things. Like we're going to cut taxes. and we're not going to get rid of services. The liberals, they're like, we're not going to get rid of, any healthcare services or the dental program. So that's going to keep lives affordable for people. And we're going to cut your taxes. Like that was the selling point. And I don't feel like the bar was very high. I feel like the NDP could have done so much better.
No, they could have, honestly. And as a young person, right, as someone from Gen Z, a lot of us felt so just felt really unheard, right? Like we want more policies that will help, for example, like affording rent, affording like grocery bills every day. Like these are things that are real, right? And as someone who lives in rural areas, right, as well, like when I look at these people, when I talk to them, the only thing they care about is obviously feeding their family. Like, and when they hear politicians talk, the only reason why they're so appealed to Polyev is because he actually talks about the issues that they care about, right? Like these are things that are important for so many people here, and it's like
Well, and like
yeah,
that's where PR is so good. Like he touches on things like gas prices.
yeah, yeah,
Most people can understand if gas prices go down, my life is going to be fundamentally better because if you live in, like, say, a rural area and you're commuting every day to work and you're spending $150 a week on gas and suddenly that's 120 or $100, that's money people are saving and they can understand that. But they can pinpoint that, whereas the
yeah.
generalized terms they can't. But now my question is, where does the NDP go? And do you think that they're going to learn from that election, or do you think they're going to keep doing the same thing and hoping for the same result?
Well, okay, so about that point, right? Like there is a lot right now. Obviously, it's public. Very much there's internal discussions about the direction of the party. A lot of people want to determine that right now, right? So we have, right now we have the leadership race rules that were released recently, and that was because of, federal council talking immensely about what should be done, especially in terms of the length of the leadership race and also in terms of the money. By the way, just a personal opinion, I really don't like the 100,000 entrance fee, but I totally understand where I totally understand why that was implemented, but
Yeah,
obviously we would want something
$100,000. If
lower.
anybody that's listening wants to
Yeah.
run, I was thinking about running, and then I heard that, and I was like, checked my bank account, and it wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has that much money like in their bank account, but yeah, I mean, whatever your opinions are about those rules, I feel like it's already said and done, right? And also just about any other groups trying to claim, or are claiming change within the party. Obviously, there we know for Reclaim, right? Reclaim has been in the media for so long. I've been in the media for a week, and generally, there's a lot of grassroots people making efforts to try and shift the party to something more left, right? Something more progressive, more in line with the roots of the party, more in line with the Regina Manifesto or Tommy Douglas. And those are really good goals to have, honestly. But end of the day, like I also want to move the party, or at least in my opinion, I think the party should go in a new direction. We don't have to cling to the past as much as we do right now. And I think we need to start asking Canadians, we start asking the public what they want to see out of the NDP, right? We can't become the liberal Democrats like in the UK, to be honest, right? No, like they're a great party back there, but like they are fundamentally also similar to Labour. So I don't think that direction of like the liberal Democrats in the UK will be beneficial for the NDP at all. However,
I think like there's this
yeah, sorry,
notion that,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but all parties believe, and I see this all the time, if they just move a little bit more right and centrist, then they're going to be able to like garner some of that vote. I don't actually believe that, but I don't believe that like this idea we need to move farther to the left, it's because they weren't progressive enough. Like I said before, I know what the NDP values are. I know what they stand for. They don't have to continue to tell me that. I know that when it comes to queer issues, where they stand. I know when it comes to Palestine, I know where they stand. It's not a question in my mind. And that's just a few to give you an example. But they can be more progressive in the policy that's going to get people ahead, but they have to be able to frame it in a way that makes sense to people and doesn't seem so far-fetched.
well,
Because when you
yeah.
pitch, like, we're going to cap grocery prices, okay, well, how's that going to work? Like, what corporation is going to be like, sure, you can come in and regulate our grocery prices? That just seems like a big court fight with a lot of money involved.
Well, to answer that as well, okay, so fundamentally I do agree. I have my ideological sympathies, right? Like that's not out of the question. However, I also understand that, a lot of what politics is nowadays is trying to appeal to a mass group of people. I mean, populism is on the rise. Like we see this not only with Mandani, but we see this with Reform in the UK. They're up in the polls
Hmm.
right now. So, but I don't think the approach should be like, oh, the party will survive if it's more left. I think what the appeal should be is that if the party's more on the ground, if they're more realistic to people's issues. I mean, whenever I hear about the economy, everyone's talking to me about the GDP. Everyone's talking about like real wage growth, but a lot of people, a lot of like people on the ground, a lot of the average Canadian, when they how they assess the economy is through looking at their paycheck, right?
Right.
They look at how much money they get at the end of the month or the end of the week or whatever. And I think we should speak to those type of people, the ones who have a family to feed, because end of the day, right, what I see the NDP as, and again, no offense to the people who've worked, they've worked so hard to bring us, for example, like things like dental care, right? But they've failed at the fact that they can't speak to the average Canadian anymore. Like we are supposed to have like at least two parties in, like, actually only honestly like only one party in the house that really is that grassroots, really is that labor centered party, and that was supposed to be us. The conservatives back in the day, like back in the 1900s, 1800s, they were like the capitalist class. Even the liberals, right? Obviously the liberals are the or the business class, right? But like the NDP is supposed to be the labor party of this country, and we've lost that vision. We've become like we're in our ivory towers right now, and a
Do you
lot
think
of
it's partly because
yeah.
people are so obsessed with the idea that they might get rich one day?
I mean, that's like I mean, yeah. I mean, everyone has that dream of like, oh, I'll become a millionaire tomorrow. I'll become a billionaire in a year.
Yeah, I feel like
But
people are
yeah,
voting for the laws that they think, or like the party that would be good for them in 20 years in that instance that they become a billionaire. And they're like, well, I just want to make sure that the policies are going to suit me if I ever become a billionaire. And I would like to say, no, Joe, you're not becoming a billionaire.
I mean,
You can't
I
even
won't
count that
discourage.
high.
Yeah, I won't discourage people having hope. I think that's what's also great about, like Canada as well. Like we've adopted a sort of like pseudo American dream, the Canadian dream. People come here to
Right.
build their own lives, right? I get that. But yeah, you're right. You're right too, though. Like we shouldn't have to, for example, think about, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like a millionaire tomorrow, which is why I want those tax cuts that the conservatives have, because I think I don't know if they're aware that it won't really apply to them, but again, like you're right, there is that hope, or there is that
And
sort of
I
fantasy.
like I want the NDP to be the party of the working people, the party of the working class. And they have to represent that though, themselves. Like the MPs that are running have to be working class people. And I'm not sure that I see that all the time. I see a lot of
No, yeah,
people that just wanted to get into politics and are in politics, who are, you know, progressives or self-proclaimed progressive, but I'm not really sure that they're like working class people. Like I'm not sure they've ever, I don't know all of their life stories. I don't know all of them, but the people that I see at the front of the party all the time are often people that I just look at and think these are like establishment
yeah.
politicians.
Well, I have a lot of nice things to say about NDP politicians. I've talked to some of them in passing, obviously some of them in like personally. But I also agree that we need more working class representation, not just in the NDP, but I think in the House generally, right? Especially now in these like really hard economic times. Like these are, like I need people who like make the same amount of money as me or make the same amount of money as us to like speak for us, because they know what we're going through. They know like what's going on, right? Like I mean, not even just economically, right? I mean, drug use is up in this country. It's insanely up, and like the mere fact that there's not been a lot of press about it, especially not a lot of policies that are passed in to get rid of that issue, is frankly me like is just telling of how out of touch a lot of politicians are, especially and I think the NDP has a chance now to take the mantle of being that um you know people's class or working party, whatever. But again, I fundamentally believe that it still needs to work towards that goal. You need to adopt more working class politicians. You need to adopt more working class policies. You need to really go out into those rural towns like Leduc or like Drumheller or places in Alberta, Saskatchewan. You need to reach out. You need to go talk to them and like ask them what they want, because sorry, I don't need to ramble for so long. I've seen these people. I've talked to these people. all they say to me is that I don't know who any of the NDP people are. Like I haven't seen them, I haven't talked to them, so why should I vote? Like why should I like risk my like paycheck for these people to win? Like not
Yeah.
everyone can just go off like social media.
Who, okay. Well, we know kind of possibly who could be some of the next leaders of the NDP. So now they're going to
Yeah.
enter into their leadership race. I think it's
Hmm.
September, right?
Yeah.
So we know Heather McPherson most likely is running. We know, who else do we know that's most likely running?
Well, obviously Yves Engler has announced, Tony McWill has announced. As of now, there hasn't been a lot of like, vibes. That vibe of like, oh, this person's definitely gonna run. But I can throw some names. Some people that I've heard, when discussing with my friends, right? Um, I've been hearing a lot of Bulleries too, as well. I don't know if that's something that he can confirm himself, but I've heard Bulleries a little bit.
Who is that?
Alexandra Bulleries, he's the deputy leader right now for the NDP.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously in Vancouver we've heard of Avi Lewis, but I'm also a big fan of his wife, Naomi Klein. And I hope she does consider something, right?
Yeah. So Avi Lewis is related to somebody that
David Lewis.
David Lewis, who is
Yeah.
the,
He's one of the founders of the NDP, and I think he was also one of the, I think, second leader of the NDP. Yeah.
okay. Everybody, Nathan knows all the history of the NDP much better
No,
than I do. And
I
so,
just passing. Yeah, go on.
yeah, so I feel like he's a likely one, Avi Lewis
Mhm.
potentially, but now Nathan has brought up his wife, and her name is, say her name
Naomi
again,
Klein. Naomi
Naomi
Klein.
Klein, who I originally thought was a model, but this is
Mm.
another Naomi Klein.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, she's got an interesting story. Tell me about her. Tell everybody
Well,
about her.
I don't know her history too much, actually. I'll be honest. I actually just got her book No Logo because I read Doctrine like a year ago, and that's why I was a big fan. But I know her to be a very big climate activist. I know her to be, a critique of capitalism. Like in the No Logo book, she talks about like how consumerism is also fueling exploitation, especially in third world countries or especially in low income countries. And I agree with that. Like, labor exploitation, especially around the world, is awful. Someone who um comes from those countries. Like I feel as if like that's a broad issue. But Naomi Klein is she is one of the greater Canadian academics, and she has spoken out in numerous occasions in the UN, especially I think with the UNFCCC. FCCC, yeah. Anyway, about climate change and all that. But I'll be honest with you, I am not an expert on Naomi Klein's history. I just know her to also be a very big part. Correct me if I'm wrong, by the way. A very big part of the Leap Manifesto that was written in part as well with Avi Lewis. And so, if you would want anyone in the audience who would want to maybe understand a little bit on her politics, I do recommend also reading her books. But I think the Leap Manifesto is also a good synthesis of that. And yeah, I'm a big fan, right? I think, especially hearing her talk in her speeches, I do think she has like a very good a very good reason to run for the NDP. I mean, obviously, if her husband is running, then you don't really want that that inner conflict, right, or that sort of competition. But I do think if she's thinking about it, I do think she should. I think
Think
honestly, yeah.
I think it
So
would
go
be
on.
good for an outside face to run as a leader.
Definitely, yes,
I feel like
yes.
people would get more excited about that. And just for the sake of the NDP, I feel like that would likely
Mhm.
be better for them.
I mean, there's precedent, right? Tommy Douglas was a little bit of an outsider. He was Toronto City Councilor before he became leader of the party, so it's definitely out there. And I mean, like we talk about Naomi Klein, we also talk about her ability to compromise with all worlds, right? I think the a lot of the people on the leftist part of the party, the Socialist Caucus, would definitely be okay with her being leader. I think a lot of us also in the reformist side would also be definitely interested, and obviously, I think maybe people who've worked in the party for long, the sort of like people who work in the party would also be like totally fine with her. She was a very big proponent in the UN, so I think it would work for everyone, right? She's a very good compromise candidate, and I would definitely be like very interested in the NDP if she were to ever run. But yeah, I mean, I want your thoughts on that as well. Like, do you think this direction for the NDP would be good?
I think they have a moment to capitalize on the fact that, I voted for Mark Carney. I think a lot of people know that. And I think he's doing everything that he said he was going to do, but he's very much conservative minded in some ways, but, socially liberal, they like to say. I think people are going to get tired of it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think there is going to be, I don't think the liberals are going to be as strong in 2 or 3 years. I think they're strong right now. I think he has a lot of support. We're going through a crisis, with the United States and the trade war and everything that's going on. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that the Mark Carney effect is going to wear off quicker than what people initially thought. And everyone's going to be looking for something else.
That's
And
true.
I'm not sure
That's
that the
true.
conservatives have something else to offer anybody. I think if they're just offering Pierre Polyev, then that's not going to be something else for anybody. I think they're going to see him and go, well, we've heard about this guy already and we kind of didn't like him before. So why are we going to like him now? And there is an opportunity for the NDP to make gains. I'm not saying that they're forming majority government or anything, but maybe there's a situation where they win back a significant number of seats and there's either a minority liberal or conservative government and they are, an opposition to them. So I think that's a possibility, but they really have to play their cards right. And I think right now, if they are fighting with the liberals too much, I don't think it'll go well for them because saying that the Mark Carney effect will wear off, I believe that people really like the liberal government right now. And I don't think right now is the time to really start digging into them and trying to tear them down. I think they'll be able to do that on their own eventually when people, when you're going through a crisis, ultimately people are losing their jobs, things are expensive, inflation goes up, unemployment goes up. You're not going to have to do all the work. Things are just going to be not great. And typically people, uh, they're looking for another option when things are going bad. It may not be the government's fault, but they're looking for someone to blame all the time. So
But if I can make this point, right? I mean, listen, I understand the leader is very important. Just like for the talk of change, right? For talk of changing his party and like what the NDP can offer differently. When it comes to like political parties, right? I like to adopt a more like decentralized model. I like parties that it's not easy, but it's very democratic for things to change. And I think again, the leader is very important. Yes, I fully agree with that. But I think the direction of the NDP should not have to be up to one singular person or one singular identity or movement. I do think it should be a very much fluid process throughout time. That if for example, the majority of the membership in the NDP wants it to be more, democratic socialist or wants to be more social democrat or even liberal, like it should be up to the majority of people within the party. And I think fundamentally as well that, if we always have to depend on a leader, if we always have to have that sort of star person on top of the Christmas tree, right? Like we're only going to it's only going to outshine the rest of the tree. It's only going to outshine everyone else that's working so hard to, for that party, even with the liberals, right? I mean, there's a lot of unrecognized phases within the liberal caucus that, maybe have other points and, conservatives as well. It would help like our political parties and help democracy and obviously just focus more on the policies. But I understand as well, it's so much easier to sell a leader than a political party. But
going off of that, though, one
yeah,
interesting thing I'll say that I've noticed, especially over the last election cycle, is that the Liberals have gotten a bit strategic with welcoming in much younger voices into their
yeah,
party and also trying to, push those people to the front of their party and be, kind of platforming them a little bit more. And this is something that like, I know we always compare our political parties to the United States. This is something that the Democrats in the US have struggled to do, but now that they've started to push people like AOC to the front, they're realizing that they can kind of capture that younger generation. And I think that if the liberals do that in a strategic way and they're able to amplify those voices and paint those specific MPs as sort of like the powerhouse, more progressive part of their party, they could also wipe the NDP out in the next election by saying, like, you don't need the NDP. We have the progressive voices over here. We have the younger people over here. And like that's where the NDP could really lose out, you know?
Yeah. Hopefully they don't do that because I don't I don't
Uh,
want to lose my party. But it's the liberals, right? You know what I mean? End of the day, like they might not. I see a lot of edits on TikTok already about, Mark Carney. So that'll be interesting to see if they go in that direction, honestly.
it's crazy how politically savvy the liberals are. I don't think people give them
Yeah.
enough credit. Like, they've won 4 elections in a row,
They're
and
really
just
good.
everywhere in the world you look, that does not happen in any democratic nation that has free and fair elections. For a party to win 4 elections in a row, that's not common. Like, that
I mean,
is
they've
crazy.
yeah, they've pulled off the impossible before, though. I can't name you like a single election, but I do know after Paul Martin and John Christian, like that was that succession of liberal prime ministers were also like that crazy. But like with I haven't really looked into the Liberal campaign enough to like tell you or like to make a sort of clear assumption as to why they won. But I can definitely tell you you're right. Like they are very like throughout Canadian history, they've been very politically savvy. Like this isn't like I'm not surprised, but I'm definitely like wow, still wowed by it.
Yeah, I still can't believe that. I was convinced last year when Justin Trudeau was 25 points behind Pierre Poilievre. I thought at best, they can form opposition to the Conservatives. Like, and even that was a stretch. People thought the Bloc was going to be the official opposition and that the Liberals would essentially have like 4 or 5 seats. But here we are.
Yeah, but like yeah, to your political experience through your opinion, like what do you think the NDP should be doing right now? Like what do you think they should be focusing on?
Well, I think obviously they need to find a leader. But to your earlier point, they really need to be working hard at who is going to be their candidates in the next election and figuring out, you know, who is going to run, like who is going to run for that party. And they can't be putting up, a bunch of people that shouldn't be there. And I understand they have a process, a democratic process of how people win those nominations, which, adds a whole other layer to it, especially if you don't have a large membership group to really pick who's running in the party. Um, but I think they need to focus on their message. What is their message going to be going forward? And they need to stick to that. Whether it's affordability. Um, yeah, I think it's probably going to be affordability. But
I
like,
mean, I would hope, right?
what are the policies that are going to be behind that? Like, what are the exact policies? And they need to have clear messaging on how they're going to relate that to the public. And as much as we like to say that, we have political parties and not leaders, they need to have a strong leader at the face of that party to get people excited if they want people to jump back over to the NDP. People need to feel like that's a safe option.
Well, who would you want as leader of the party?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh,
I've thought about that a lot, and it's not that I don't like any of the current MPs that are in the NDP. I really like them. I think they're all amazing people. I really like Heather McPherson. She's seems like such a nice person. I haven't seen her speak enough to know, like, is she the leader that can carry the party into the next election and make gains for them? I mean, it seems like, a lot of people have talked about her being the likely leader of the NDP. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I think she's a very genuine person, which is, in politics, I think that's what we need. But
yeah.
it's if she can resonate with people and they can also feel that and think, I want to vote for this person.
I definitely agree. And like I haven't talked to her like all obviously, and I haven't I've seen her just like talks on Instagram, and I've watched all speeches on the in the house, but yeah, I'd honestly I just want to see what she would be pushing for. I want to see policies. I'm a very stickler in policies because I really again as a young person, and I hopefully can speak for a lot of young people. I don't care about who the politicians are. All I care about are they going to give me the like a little bit of more money, right, in terms of like support for myself, especially in schooling, right, especially in terms of living in this country, because right now you're right, affordability is an actual great crisis. A lot of people are suffering because of it. And not to like go over time a little bit, but I remember I was in Hamilton. I met this woman who was working 2 jobs, still homeless, right? which I think speaks to a broader issue in Canada of like, we really do have a problem that we need to fix. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I've said this too. Over the last election, the whole focus was on, um, how can people buy their first home? And I said, I'm not even so sure that people under 30 are worried about that. They're just worried about being able to buy groceries next week, never mind buying their first home. And so
yeah,
I think in some ways, the politicians are getting it wrong. Like one, because every party focused on that. Nobody focused on anything else. And I heard from a lot of young people, my age and younger, that, they're like, well, I'm not even voting in the election because nobody's talking about anything that's going to help me. They're like, I'm not
yes.
buying my first home. I'm not worried about that. I just want to be able to like put gas in my car tomorrow. So,
But also, just to like equalize responsibility a little bit, a lot of young people have to go to the polls. They really have to be more politically engaged. Like,
yes.
if we want our voices heard, we actually have to talk. We have to speak up. Like, so, like, like, obviously, we expect politicians, we expect political parties to reach out their hand to us, but we also should reach out too. It should be like a coupling, right? We don't like it isn't like we don't have to just expect that, like our wants in the Canadian history or our wants in Canada will be heard if we don't necessarily speak up or we don't say it, right? It can't just be through the internet. We have to go out there and we have to start advocating for the things that we need. And so, to anyone who's listening who's like as my age, like I do hope that you do the same thing. And, we all start caring about the country that we live in because it is important.
Perfect. We're going to leave it there. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you
And
so much, Cole. I
we're
really
going to do this
appreciate it.
again soon. I promise.
Heck yeah.